I'll never dump on Impact. I'll never dump on TNA either. I'll take my TNA roster from 2007, 2008, 2009 against WWE at that time any day of the week. So he bumps into me, looks up at me. How tall are you, son? I told him. My first time doing the F5 was the Big Show. Brother, that's the first time I ever tried the F5.
What's your day-to-day look like right now, being the mayor of Longwood?
Number one, obviously, whatever our residents need.
Oh, it's so good to see you, my friend.
You as well, man. Looking
You
jacked
look
up.
like a real politician. Look at this.
It may look that way with what I'm wearing. I just came from a meeting, but don't call me that word. That's an evil, nasty word.
Are you just, is it business up top only? Like, are you wearing just like boxer shorts?
I went to stand up right now and like,
Oh no!
I'm rocking my tidy whities. But public servant, that's the word. Big difference.
Okay. That's another P word. Okay, public servant.
Well, you got to remember, politicians are in this for life, and that's their, that's going to be their main job for their, majority of their life. That's not my plan. That's never been my plan or my intention. I hate politics and politicians. I've said that for 5 years now. But, it's very different on a city level, in my opinion, in your own hometown. And doing something that you have absolutely, in the beginning, no experience with. You just want to, it'll happen, if you remember, because my son Jackson was born in 2014. That changed my prism on everything from I'm retiring earlier than I expected from wrestling. And what can I do to leave my thumbprint in the community that this little nonverbal autistic boy is going to grow up in? And that's what started me pulling the curtain back farther and farther to see who the decision makers around here. And then you start to realize, well, I'm sure where you live, they all think the same thing. You want to elect people in office that's your neighbor, people that down to earth and have the will of the people behind every decision they make up on that dais at every meeting.
I feel like your campaign could have just been like knocking on doors and like they open the door and they're like, oh, yeah, whatever you say, I'll vote for you.
So in real life, I learned very quickly I'd have to knock because nobody outdoor knocks me. Like I love doing it. I do. Because that's another way you can get a judge on how well are you doing or how crappy are you doing, right? Like you can get your instant feedback whenever it's time to campaign for re-election. Anyways, so I learned very quickly because of my size, it'd be much smarter if I door knocked and immediately took 10 steps back. Because who would open the door to Neanderthal man over here, right? Right?
Were you always this big?
Yeah.
Like were you born at were you 12 pounds when you were born or something?
No, I was tall. No, I was tall and skinny.
Okay.
Until I got to college and then got absolutely obsessed with the weight room. Still to this day, my wife and I are very addicted to it. Love working out.
Well, the interesting thing is, like, when you're this tall in high school, even if you're not athletic, and you were, but even if you're not athletic, you're tall. So they're like, well, you're going to play basketball. That's just how this is going to work.
And that is the path I took originally. I thought I love basketball, loved wrestling, but it ended up getting me a Division I, basketball scholarship at Monmouth University. We made the NCAA tournament my freshman year, first time in our school's history. That was amazing. And that's just my freshman year. That was cool. My coach was then going to be retiring. And they had like 2 6'10" kids they were going to be bringing in the next class after my sophomore season. And I was just like, no, I have not worked this hard to sit on the bench and come in behind 2 freshmen that, they're very good, but I've paid my dues. And so anyways, long story short, I transferred to Chaminade University in Hawaii. That's where I met my beautiful wife, Larissa, my first day on campus, actually. And played basketball there, finished out my basketball career, wherever you want to call it, there.
How close were you to playing in the NBA? Because I know that you had tryouts for NBA teams. So how close was this to being a reality?
Being a space eater and being a bruiser, but that can also shoot from the outside. My strength was definitely shooting. But this was before, at a time where like the NBA and college today is very different. Right now, you have the stretch four. That's an actual position. That would have been my position. But back then, I was being brought in as a power forward, technically height-wise, small forward, really. But you had guys like Austin Crocier that had been drafted by the Pacers that year. He was the number one draft choice from Providence. He was an All-American. He was absolutely amazing. And anyway, so like he's a three-point shooter, handle the ball, things like that. And you had me as this very big, like I said, bruiser and rebounder and shot blocker. And the NBA was not where it's at today as far as wanting their 4s and 5s to be able to shoot. You know, so no, never. It was a dream, it was a goal, obviously, but I was also very realistic about it too. And by then, I already met Vince McMahon. I already met Vince McMahon by that point in my lifetime as well. So he was the one that told me, you know, you owe this to your family. Please go try it. You know, we'll always be here, kind of a thing. And then Tough Enough came about, and that's how I got started.
How did the first meeting with Vince come about?
So I was bound in the summer times. I would work for our Fairfield, Connecticut Highway Department. Because when you're an NCAA student athlete, you couldn't work during the school year back when I was in college to earn money. You couldn't. You could only work in the summer times. So I'd have to work odd jobs to make as much money as I can. And then that following school year, I'd have some spending money and things like that. You know, take my wife out on a date or something like that, right? So I worked for the highway department in Fairfield, Connecticut. That's 3 towns over from Stamford, where Titan Towers is right now. Their headquarters for WWE.
Yeah.
And it's my hometown in Fairfield. And I also bounced at a nightclub there. God, it was called the Seagrave. And in walked this WWF Raw magazine writer one night. And I was working the door. And his name was Marco Torelli. And he goes, "You ever think about wrestling?" I'm like, funny you should ask, you know, like, this is something I've always wanted to do. Yeah. And he's like, "Well, Vince McMahon works out every Friday night at Titan Towers. Meet me there." And then we had shared phone numbers. And every Friday night for the next 6 months, I went there every single week, hopefully to bump into him, right? Like Marco. Well, finally it happened. He was walking out of the men's room as I was walking into the men's locker room at their gym there. They have a beautiful gym. And this was back when that was much more sacred ground. That to work out in that gym, like they would very rarely even do photo shoots there back in the day. Let alone let, you know, Big Lumpkin over here walk in, right? So because Marco was really well respected, they just assumed I was his friend or whatever, so I was able to come there. So I'm walking into the locker room and Vince is walking out and slammed basically right into my chest. And ironically, that's the same way I met my wife. Same scenario. Just Captain Goof-a-lot over here, not being any aware whatsoever of my surroundings. So I'm walking into the men's locker room at the gym there at Titan Towers. And as I'm walking in, Vince was walking out and goes right into my chest. And ironically, this is literally how I also met my wife in college. Same exact scenario. Not being any aware of my surroundings whatsoever, apparently, or just being very klutzy, one or the other. Anyway, so he bumps into me, looks up at me, like, "How tall are you, son?" And I told him. And he said, "How much you weigh?" And I told him. And this time I was huge. I was like 382. I was enormous at this point because I wanted to be a wrestler. And I didn't talk about being a mark. I didn't know wrestlers were using gimmick heights and gimmick weights. Like I knew there's a little exaggeration here or there, but I never met one of the big, huge pro wrestlers like a Big Show or an Undertaker. You know, I always met like Paul Roma or somebody like that, like not a skyscraper, right? So I just assumed maybe a couple inches was being exaggerated at worst, you know what I mean? But so I thought I'd get as big as humanly possible, right? To impress everybody and maybe get a job. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And so long story short, that's when we had the conversation about, I had a NFL combine coming up, and also an NBA tryout, and he had told me, I owe that to my family to try those, options first, and that they'll always be there, and that they have this reality show that's going to be coming out in the future. And so some time goes by, and I ended up, being told to send my tape in for MTV WWF Tough Enough Part 2.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it went.
Are you a legit 7 feet tall?
No, 6'11" 3/4.
Okay, I won't tell anyone. Don't worry.
Nobody like, but does that sound? So how tall are you? 6'11" 3/4. Like doesn't. There's no ring to that. That does sound corny.
Look, if anyone was 5'11" 3/4, they are 1000% calling themselves 6 feet tall.
And barefoot. How about
that? So there we go. So with boots on, you're like 7'3", 7'2".
Especially the first frigging Spice Girl boots I was rocking in OVW my first year, because again, Mark Matt over here had like these huge lifts on my first pair of boots, because I was told so do the other guys, the other big men, many of them. So yeah, legit, probably 7'2" in those, tell me what you want, what you really want, boots.
Well, you really want to zig-a-zig-ah.
Yes.
What's your day-to-day look like right now, being the mayor of Longwood?
Whatever, number one, obviously, whatever our residents need. I'm a in-person type of, guy as far as wanting to meet with them. If they have an issue with anything, I like to meet with them in person about it, because we have a small city. We're only 16,000 residents here. And that's actually grown from where it was when I first started in 2017 during my first term. So we've grown, but that's a big part of it, is meeting with our folks, that have questions or ideas. Another big thing I like to do is I like to get many people incorporated into our city as possible, as far as joining boards and other committees and things like that, because I'm as far from the outside as one can come and be involved in something like this, right? So it sets a precedent for many, many others that have no background in this, don't like it like I didn't like it. And when I say don't like it, meaning didn't pay attention to politics, couldn't tell you really what party I was, nothing like that, right? And maybe I should be ashamed of that, but that's really the truth. Growing up, I didn't really pay close attention to any of that. Busy as a wrestler and just being dialed in. When you're a wrestler, that's all you're really
Sure, yeah.
So anyways, more day-to-day stuff is I also work. So the city of Longwood, and many cities in our county for that matter, the elected official is almost considered a part-time position. So many of us, in fact, all 5 of my commissioners and I, all have another job in which they perform because I make $942 after taxes per month being there. So you do this because you legit, you're not doing it to get rich. You do it because you want to make a difference in your darn community. Not just for your own children, but for everybody's kids.
$940 a month after taxes?
But what is it, about $942 after taxes each month? How much? My bad, $928.
Oh man, you're trying to give yourself a raise.
But so I say that because something I'm very passionate about, and I'm trying to cram everything into one sentence here, but I'm a 17-year, almost 17-year now recovered opioid addict.
Yeah.
So one of my other biggest passions is getting people sober, getting them help, and getting them clean. So my other job is I work with a treatment facility here in Central Florida that I get alcoholics help and those struggling with drug addiction and other mental health issues help just the same. And I love it. I love that.
What was the thing that helped you get clean the most?
I got to be honest, and this is where addicts, you always hear them going through rehab, and sometimes it doesn't work the first couple times.
Yeah.
Because mistakenly, we're thinking we're being good people by trying to get help because I want my wife over there, to think higher of me and to see me being willing to take this on and do anything it takes for her. Or maybe you try to get sober for your child. It will not work. You
Got
have
to do
to
it for
want to
you.
get clean for yourself.
Yeah.
It's the one thing I've ever experienced in my life that it is okay to be selfish about. Meaning, you have to think you're important enough in this world that overdosing should scare you. Your life is that important. It is that meaningful. And unbeknownst to me in the beginning, I didn't know I was just clouding all that out. But in reality, that's really what I was doing. I overdosed 7 times, you know, along my journey. So I love doing that. I love helping people, you know, find their sobriety. That's ultimately, I do think that's my biggest calling. Not to sound like holier than thou or something, but I do think that's my biggest calling. I think that's why Lord made me a wrestler, why I became an American gladiator, why I'm 7 feet tall, 6'11 3/4. All that good stuff, all that sizzle, because the stake behind it, in my opinion, was meant to help my community and also help addicts.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a slippery slope. Like, I'm sure when it started for you, it was uphill.
Yeah.
Then it turned into 2 pills. At what point did you realize, ooh, this is maybe getting out of control a little bit?
Want to hear something crazy, Chris? The crazy thing is, I was a fully functioning addict. So anything you see of me in a WWE ring on YouTube, right? I'm high.
Wow.
You can't tell. I have glossy eyes. I'm not throwing up. I'm not showing up late to work. Not working hard. My body was in great shape, right? So that made it an easy rationalization for me that, okay, all these guys at the time are abusing steroids and more hardcore drugs. I'm taking prescription painkillers. What's the big deal?
Yeah, doctor's giving it to me. It can't be that bad.
That's the obvious, right? So as we know, 80% of all opioid addiction starts with a prescription. Yeah. But I want to be clear. I still don't think it's okay to put 100% of the onus on those doctors, because I still would work the gimmick, meaning I go in with my MRI showing I don't have an L5 anymore. What the hell? How are you even walking? That kind of reaction. And sure, I'd get whatever painkiller they wanted to give me. But that's still me working an angle to get my fix. So if you're gonna really, really be sober, you have to own every bit of your addiction, every single millimeter of it. Own up to it, and openness. I mean, not to get all biblical on people, but turn yourself over to whatever your higher power is. That you're helpless. That you're absolutely helpless without getting that.
Well, then we hear the slippery slope ends up going into, once you can't get painkillers anymore, it starts turning into heroin. And that just sounds very scary.
It does. It does. And there was a bodybuilder designer drug at the time called Nubane that a lot of the boys would use, where you can just put it in I think it's called an insulin syringe or something like that. And you can inject it, and you would get the same high that you would from the painkiller high. Same thing. And so, yeah, man, you're not wrong. It does open up other Pandora's boxes to potentially other drugs. You're not wrong.
Do you think about what your WWE run could have looked like had you been sober the entire time?
I would have had that chance when I was supposed to go back and re-debut with them. 2014, January 2014 in the Royal Rumble. And I had new gear. It was going to be the blueprint finally, and on WWE TV, not TNA, but WWE. And my son Jackson was born January 7th. And that was something that my wife and I have been praying on for 12 straight years. We went through 8 bouts of IVF with ICSI. None of them worked. And by the grace of God, she naturally got pregnant. It was the biggest thing for me in my life ever. And so when he was born and I held him for the first time, this switch went off in my head and I was done. I'm not going back on the road. I need to be a dad, and I need to be home here every night, with my son. And like I've said many times, that ended up being the right decision, because just, almost 3 short years later, a little bit under 3 years later, Jackson was diagnosed as being nonverbal autistic. So again, it's a tag team between me and my wife on being able to take care of him and do the litany and myriad of things we have to do every single, day before he goes to school, after he goes to school, all the therapy he needs, getting him in the right charter school, that all those different things that are very important. But let's say that never happened. I was on track to be debuting for Royal Rumble 2014, that January. And so I called them up. I told them what happened.
You told them what happened. You told them you're a father now.
Yeah. Told them the great news, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't know they were happy for me, but they didn't know as much about the story as, let's say, Dixie Carter from TNA did. Dixie Carter was over the moon because she tried to help me and my wife a couple of times by flying this doctor into TNA tapings in Orlando at Universal Studios to help me and my wife, because she had a similar issue trying to have children as well, and so I just thought that was amazing. And anyways, WWE, they got it, they understood. I'm like, it's not like some trick. I'm not trying to just get out of this deal, just because I'm going to go over here or something like that.
Yeah.
This is something that people talk about their dreams. That's been my biggest dream since I was a little kid, was to be a dad. Be married, have a home, and be a dad. Swear to God. And had the first two, just waiting on that third that took us about 12 years to finally have that child. And
Yeah.
incredible, man, incredible.
And look at your WWE career. Obviously, your career's been broken up into a bunch of different sectors, I would say. Like your WWE run, then you were in TNA, probably the best time you could possibly be in TNA.
I thought so, yeah.
And then kind of everything after that. But I look at your WWE run, and I feel like you just got jerked around a lot. You had so many possibilities to turn something into gold, and it was just taken away from you. What do you think was the biggest opportunity?
Say it again.
What do you think was the biggest opportunity in WWE?
Oh, really? You for sure the stuttering character, right? No, I'm joking. I'm being very facetious. But definitely the first time, even though it was still, they called me up prematurely. I'd only been in OVW for maybe, I think, under a year. I got called up very quickly.
Yeah.
And got put on that Team Lesnar team with Brock Lesnar and everybody else bigger than him, like Big Show, A-Train, Nathan Jones, and myself. Still the biggest team in Survivor Series history. Anyways, but then that I thought would have been the best because number one, I'm being brought into a main event setting by being, associated with Brock Lesnar, who was the world champion at the time. All my house show matches were with majority were oh God, Benoit, Kurt Angle, Eddie, JBL, who was still doing, I believe, the APA stuff at the time. Bob Holly, really good talents that helped me improve quickly. But anyways, I think I say that time because me and Nathan were supposed to win the titles of WrestleMania 20. That was supposed to be the plan. And Nathan quit on, when we went on tour to Australia months before WrestleMania 20 was coming. And it is what it is. When you're a tag team like that, sometimes you're, associated with what happens with your partner. So I knew something would happen to me once he quit, but they instead of just sending me down back to developmental right away, they kept me with Brock a little bit longer, and they had me come out and be his heater and things like that. Not that he needs a heater, but therein lies the heat, right? He's Brock freaking Lesnar. He's a one-man army.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I'd accompany him to ringside. I'd wrestle my own matches as well versus smaller opponents to make me look bigger, right? But that I thought was the best time for them to do something with me. But I got sent back down to Louisville, OVW, and I finally got a chance to learn how to work as a heel because my entire run in OVW, my first time, I was only a babyface on television.
Yeah.
So this did do me a great deal of justice of improving, getting my timing down better, working on body language, working on playing to the people up in the nosebleed sections, things like that, that I really wasn't aware of just yet because I was so green still. My first call. So when they called the second time, I jumped on the opportunity because it was an idea, a stuttering character that Vince McMahon came up with. And if Vince gets behind something, not gets behind something, but he's the one that creates it,
Yeah.
you assume it's going to go to the top because he does, especially at that time. I only recall him coming up with Carlito's character at that time. And you saw what he did with that character. Carlito
Sure,
got
yeah.
crazy, right? Yeah, Carlito was huge. Got
Absolutely.
huge. So you assume like the same will happen for you because Vince doesn't do it every day, where he comes up with his own character and then standing behind the camera every time you're cutting a promo there and giving me all that attention. So stuttering or not, the guy told me to put a pink jockstrap on my face and walk the ring backwards. I would have done it. That's how I was trained.
Yeah.
You tell me you say jump, how I'm supposed to say how high.
Yeah. It was so interesting seeing you do the F5. And I'm curious what like the first time you did it. Like, did Brock walk you through it? Just like see it and go, I can do that thing.
No.
F5 coming from 7 feet up is very different from anyone else doing it.
I'm surprised you saw that and noticed that. So funny story. I always felt like Vince called me into his office to tell me that was going to be my new finisher. And it was right. I always felt it was kind of like as a shot to Brock, because Brock at this point, I get called back up to SmackDown as black dyed haired, pirate beard looking, stuttering Matt Morgan, right, with the black trunks. And anyways, he calls me in his office, tells me he wants me to be doing the F5 as a finisher. Do I think I can do it? And I said, sure, no problem. But in the back of my head, I always kind of thought that it was a shot at Brock because he had just, not too long ago quit their company to go try out for NFL.
Yeah.
And I always kind of thought that was maybe a dig at him because I was close with Brock at the time. My first time I got called up, like I rode with him a couple times. He told me anything I ever needed come to him with, and I did. My first time I got called up, we had that Danny Davis, Ohio Valley Wrestling connection together. But anyways, my first time doing the F5 was the Big Show. That was the very first time, brother, that's the first time I ever tried the F5. So when they said, can you do it? Yes, sir, no problem. But then, you hope Big Show will help you get his big butt up, things like that when you deliver the move. But, we pulled it off, luckily. And at the time, I'm pretty sure I was only the third time to lift I'm pretty sure I was only the third person to lift Big Show up on their shoulders, at least in a WWE ring. I know Cena did, and I know Brock did. I was the third.
Yeah, and in WCW, it was Goldberg.
Oh my God, he did a jack.
Can you believe that? Yeah.
I would argue that's even harder.
I would agree with that. I mean, versus a fire carry for sure.
Okay, yes and no, because Big Show was freaking an amazing. He's always been a great athlete, but he was really an amazing athlete with WCW. You remember how jacked Big Show was?
So jacked. He moved so quickly.
Right?
Giant, yeah.
Throwing missile drop kicks off the top rope.
Crazy.
Yeah, man.
With your size, you should be part of these conversations. Like when people talk about the big men in wrestling, your name doesn't come up nearly as often as it should.
Oh, geez, thank you. Very flattering, but
and maybe it's because people don't consider you a big man because you don't work like a traditional big man. You just happen to be tall and really athletic.
Yeah, I mean things like shooting star press moonsault easily, but things that they would never allow me to do when I was coming up. And as a big guy, we all have this inherent thing in our heads that we want to show everybody we're not just some big klutzy goof, but we're way more athletic than we look and this and that. But I had a 41-inch vert. You know what I mean? Like at over 330 pounds. Like that's a shoot, seriously. So like I could do things athletically, but I'd always get yelled at for it. Whereas today's wrestling, oh my God, if I could just, if I could be dropped in today's wrestling with them letting the big guys do some of these more athletic maneuvers, I would have, man, I think I would have made out.
Well, I mean, you kind of have been dropped back into today's wrestling. We saw you on Impact recently.
Yes, they were here locally. I was very excited to go see some old friends there. I'll never dump on Impact. I'll never dump on TNA either. I know a lot of people like to do that. I don't. I'll take my TNA roster from 2007, 2008, 2009 against WWE at that time any day of the week.
Yeah, that roster was stacked, and not enough talk about this. Stacked. And I know that television ratings were, very different 15 years ago, but 3 million people were watching Impact back then.
And people always ready to go TNA, LOL. I'm like, no, LOL. Go back in time and watch those matches, watch the storylines. More importantly, the ratings. The ratings were, especially versus, I know it's today, different today, right?
Yeah, I get it. Like 3 million people were watching Impact, maybe 6 or 7 million were watching Raw. I don't know the numbers exactly, but still, it's a lot of eyeballs to watch you guys week in and week out.
On Spike TV, man. That was a huge network at the time.
Yeah, a huge network that used to have Raw. Like that's people were used to watching wrestling.
Yeah, man.
So I think when people saw you in Impact recently, they went, "Oh, this is going to be something. Like this can't just be a one-off."
Of course it could. I'm a mayor of a city. I can't just start. All right, see you later, folks. I'm gonna go start throwing drop kicks and body slams.
Kane is a mayor of a county, and he shows up every year.
Those are one-off. Those are one-off appearances. You got to. This is a demanding as hell job. Trust me. Plus, I'm on 12, 13 other boards and committees. I sit on our Seminole County Opioid Council. All these different boards and committees on top of everything. My wife does too now. I'm very proud of my wife.
You're one of the very few wrestlers that has been very successful in the second phase of your life. And this is no disrespect to other wrestlers, but there's a lot of them that hang on to those glory years in their 20s and 30s. And, they don't have a second job they can go into. They don't have another skill that they've honed. And you've been successful as a public servant, and a lot of people don't have that.
Thank you. And I'd be lying to you, though, if I told you like this was planned. Because I always try to tell younger wrestlers, have a backup plan and don't be embarrassed about it. The wrestling doesn't work out. That's our biggest enemy, is we get embarrassed at first that maybe we didn't make it to where we wanted to make it, etc. And there's that ego that makes you a successful pro wrestler to begin with, by the way. Right? It's a very important attribute you have to have. But it also will hurt you when that spotlight has faded and you're not on TV anymore. And I went through it too. But looking at that little boy, sure as hell cheered me up very quickly, because I knew this was the right decision. I knew it was the right decision. But I didn't like get into the world of, I ain't saying politics, but elected official, no, public servant. Because
I'll take it even one step further. I think there's a lot of people who are successful in whatever avenue of life it happens to be, whether it's wrestling or it's sports, whatever. And then they get into this next phase of their life and they're not immediately good at it. And they go, "Oh, I can't let people see me failing at this because I've been so successful doing this other thing for so long."
100%. Yes. And you got to remember the other aspect of this. I stick out like a sore thumb, right? So even like you, as a wrestler, you're used to people coming up to you and saying, "Hey, aren't you so-and-so from so-and-so?" Right? So when that starts to fade a little bit, that messes with people's heads a little bit, or they think they have to be that character, well, not character on television, but that wrestler as their identity. They have to be that identity all the time. Versus, no, you don't. Kevin Thorne's doing a very good job as we speak as a real estate agent, right? He's crushing it out there. There's Nova is running a bank somewhere in Louisville. There's tons of wrestlers that are doing very good things with their lives after pro wrestling. I think we're going to see it continue to crescendo with more and more pro wrestlers that you hear these cool stories about of what they're doing after pro wrestling. And to be fair, the wrestlers of the past, they didn't have the benefit that we have today in social media.
Absolutely.
The only reason the wrestling fan even knows I'm a mayor of a city is because they follow me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, right? So I'm not the mayor of their city, right? So how would they know? So that's another thing we got to point out too. But like I said earlier, brother, this was not in the plans. and it's not going to continue to stay in the plans. Don't get me, because I passed term limits when I first got elected. You only serve 3 4-year terms and got to get out.
Then you're going to run for governor, right?
You wish. No. Lord, no.
Senate?
No. I don't know. I because the one thing I have learned is that everything I do, I decided to talk to my wife first, my mom even still first as well, with my wife, and make those decisions as a team, because you're bringing them into this arena. Once you become an elected official, you're bringing everything into this. You're going to be in a world in which you get to get lied about, exaggerated about, told half truths about on purpose, and you have to sit there and take it. And you have to, that's just how it works. And you have to have the thick skin to be able to take it. But so does your family. People always forget that part. So to do that, it's then have to justify the means as far as I feel I can have an impact on whatever that community is in whatever elected role that one day may be. That's not here, but I don't know. Here's my reason why. I don't think I'll get the same attaboy, pat on the back, thank you, Matt, for doing what you've done for our city, that I get here at the gas station or at the Publix or at any of these community events that I help set up. These fundraisers, like I don't think I get that, and that's the high I chase. It's not just $928, obviously. it's the I'm changing this, helping change this community from, an historic city that we're very proud of, our historic district, but also by progressing it into the future and attracting younger families finally to our city.
What kind of conversations have you had with Glenn Jacobs, with Kane, about doing what you guys do?
Early on, I had saw that he had, I had been elected. My first term, I got elected in 2017. And I saw about people, are always in your ear telling you stuff, right? And there's one guy said, hey, do you know Glenn Jacobs? I'm like, freaking Kane? Yeah, of course. And they're like, did you know he's running for mayor of Knox County? I'm like, no, I did not know this. So I picked up the phone, called him, wished him luck. He didn't know that I'm doing what I'm doing at the time, so we kind of laughed over that, right? And ironically, he was always my favorite wrestler. He was my favorite wrestler. I'd say from college years on, him and Undertaker, both very athletic big men, right? So I just, shot the breeze with him over the phone a little bit, and anytime he's up for, re-election or anything like that, I give him, hey, good luck, and congratulations if he wins, and vice versa. But I remember talking to him about one initiative I was very proud of when I first got elected here in Longwood in 2017. If you're going to be an elected official for your people, how many people do you think come to your city council or commission meeting?
I would think it's like 30 people.
Right? And if they're there, they're usually there primarily
to complain.
To complain, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my biggest thing when I knocked doors when I first got elected in 2017, I told the folks, I go, folks, I'm going to be brand new at this. Okay. I have no political background. I think that's a good thing. And because of that, I need you all to come to these meetings, because the way this should work is I should be nothing more than your conduit. That seat that I'm sitting in up on that commission dais ain't mine. It's yours. I'm just your megaphone for 4 years until you find somebody you want to do this instead of me. That's the way I legitimately really do see that. I swear to God on that, Chris. And so with that, I came up with being the first city in the Southeast region to be able to start streamlining Facebook Live commission meetings. So everything we do as a city commission, even just our negotiations for our police contracts, our firefighter contracts, our city manager contracts, all of that is all on Facebook Live. You can go to City of Longwood's Facebook page. You can look them all up dating back to 2018 to when I first made this initiative happen. And I'm bringing that up because that is a conversation I had with Glenn. And I called him up and told him about it, that you really want to get, I'm nobody to give him advice, obviously. I'm not trying to say that. But the whole intent of being an elected official is you want your feedback from your residents.
Sure.
Right? Because it's their seat, like I said earlier. And if they're not involved, paying attention to what's happening, how are you supposed to get a fair gauge on what are the things they want and don't want?
Right?
Like legit. That's how it's supposed to be. So Facebook Live has been a godsend to our city. And to me personally, to be able to get constant, instant feedback, like, no, Matt, why would you do that? Right? Fine. give it to me. We need to know.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Glenn about that a little bit, as he had just won his election the first time in 2018, I think. But yeah, proud of the work he's doing. And it's not easy. He's the mayor of a county. A county. Bigger than a city.
How close? Like I heard this angle about you being Kane's other brother, Abel.
So you were the first person I told that to. I've never shared that story before.
That was crazy.
So no, Johnny Ace and Stephanie wanted me to wear a mask to work on my body language, right? And so I remember Jim Cornette just being like, what are you doing? He's like our top baby face, he's our champion. Why does he got to wear a mask? This is stupid. He's a good looking kid. Like, totally put me over, and I'll always be grateful to Jimmy for that. I love Jimmy. I'll always be Jimmy. And anyways, so they put me in this stupid hood, and Jimmy found a way to make it work because he's freaking brilliant.
Are there photos of this masked character we can find online?
Definitely. Sadly, yes. I'm sure there are. Yes. And when
was it the same name? Was it just Matt Morgan with a mask?
I lost the Loser Leaves Town match at OVW, right? Yeah. And then they put me in a hood, and I came back and said, I'm not Matt Morgan, I'm the Blueprint.
There you are, like a black and white mask.
Yeah, kind of like Bane, if I remember right. That's the one. That's one.
Wow. Yeah.
But listen, so then eventually, Stephanie once told me that, like, if you don't like it, tell us it, blah, 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 blah. But we have an idea for you with this if you do like it, and you would be brought up to television and to work with Kane.
Yeah. Now
I've seen somewhere where like somebody is like, oh, plans for this were abandoned, and what's his name? My boy, good brother.
Carl Anderson?
It used to be Festus.
Gallows, yeah.
Gallows was then brought into two different time periods. When he was brought in to be fake Kane, that was at a very different time. I wasn't even with WWE. I was already with TNA by this point. But anyways, so that never materialized of me being brought up to the roster as Abel. Would have been pretty cool though, but I didn't like wearing the hood, if I'm being honest. I hated it.
Sure.
So
it changed your whole career trajectory if that happened.
No. Yeah.
But look, I guess wrestling is often this whole thing of like, if this thing happens, then this thing happens. If this thing doesn't happen, then, I feel like it could go that either way.
Butterfly effect, yeah.
Yes, I talk about this all the time. I talk about this at stupid great length about how Back to the Future is my favorite movie because of that exact reason.
Yeah, great. All of them are great, by the way. I love all of them.
But it's the idea that if this thing doesn't happen, it doesn't lead to this thing, which then leads to that thing. Like, who knows? If all those things hadn't come together, maybe you wouldn't be sitting here right now as the mayor of Longwood. Maybe you wouldn't be a father. Who knows?
There you go. That's what I was about to say. I'll give you one bigger. I watch all your shows. I really do. I watch every single one because I think you do. You're who I watch when I do cardio.
Wow,
and
that's very kind. Thank you.
And you do a great job with all your guests. You have a great collection of not just pro wrestling, but you have this freaking rock. You have major stars come on your show. And I'm going to tell you something. This, for all you know, could still just be something else that sets up something bigger. As big as you are, because you're a big deal. I'm not saying it's blow smoke up here. You know what? I'm being honest with you. You're a very big deal to what you do, and especially in the space you are in. You're one of the very best at what you do. With that in mind, it's still, for all we know, could still just be that first domino for you of what could end up being something just enormously, like, who knows what big. For real.
Well, thank you. That's so kind of you to watch my show. Very nice of you to say that. And look, whenever people are like, well, what do you want to do, this year? What are your goals? I just say I want more. Like, without this turning into a therapy session here, like, I just want more. I want to do more of all of this. Like,
hell yeah.
Hey, I interviewed Reese Witherspoon and Ashton Kutcher. That's awesome. What turn into.
Right.
And I got Anthony Mackie this Friday. Like I've got big celebrity interviews, and it's so fun because I've been doing celebrity interviews for like 17 years now.
Right.
It's funny because a lot of people just know me for my YouTube content, and a lot of that's just pro wrestling interviews, which obviously I love pro wrestling. I wanted to be a pro wrestler when I was growing up.
Right.
But there's people that are like, did I see you doing an interview with George Clooney? I'm like, oh, yeah. They're like, you're doing big things. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm also just doing my job as an entertainment reporter.
There's nothing corny about that. It's called a living and being with purpose. And I'm a very big believer of law of attraction. I'm a huge believer in it. In fact, we just found our own vision boards to go back and go through them. Like we do it all the time, my wife and I.
Oh, wow.
That's how you should have seen when we were trying to get pregnant. We had vision boards all over this house. We probably looked like lunatics if people came to visit us, with babies everywhere, pregnant bellies, diapers, bottles, everything to get inside our head. We're going to be freaking parents. I'll do you one step further.
Yeah.
When we purchased this home, I built the nursery. She was not pregnant, nothing.
Wow.
Because again, I really put my money where my mouth is. I believe in it wholeheartedly. You have to, not to get cheesy here, but to our viewers watching and listening, I swear God is my witness. If you can put it in your head, don't just put it in your head of things you want to do with your life. You have to taste it. You have to smell what it would smell like, hear what it would sound like, everything, no matter what that is. It's to be a pro wrestler. Don't just imagine what it will feel like to be in the ring. Imagine what the smell of the hot dogs and popcorn will smell like in the arena. What the sweat will feel like falling off your body, walking back up the rampway, holding up your championship title belt. You have to get detail oriented with the senses of having those things now. You have to pretend you have them now. And it's hard to do with money. It's not easy to do with money. I struggle with that myself.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be a millionaire. Okay, you have to, they say for it to really work, and for you to really make this stuff happen, you have to really act like you have this stuff or you are that stuff now.
Yeah. I love this stuff so much. I love talking to any of my guests about this. And I always see the negative feedback from people that are like, well, that's easy for you to say. That's easy for you to say because you're successful, or look at everything you've got, or that's easy for your guests to say. And the crazy thing about that for me is that you're only seeing a snapshot of someone's life in their most successful phase of their life.
Of course.
Stumbles along the way to get there. Like I always tell people, like, well, just go read anything about what Oprah. Like Oprah should not have been Oprah.
No.
Just had this goal in mind and just didn't stop till it happened.
That's exactly right. And you got to remember, social media, what are we doing on social media? We are showing our best selves in that situation, that minute of that day, right? So we all see each other at our highest that day. And that's another thing that people get in their heads because of it. They don't know I got kicked out of 4 grammar schools before first grade, struggled with a speech impediment, ADHD, things like that. Or I'm sure thousands of your struggles, coming up in the beginning too.
Yeah, I had my dream job when I was 23 years old. And I moved my entire life from Toronto to Vancouver, 47-hour drive in my 1995 Toyota Corolla. Got there, did the show for a year. It was unbelievable. It was amazing. And then our show got canceled. And I had to pack up my entire life, drive those 47 hours back, move back in with my parents. And I was unemployed for 7 months.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what am I going to do? I just had the job where I was interviewing actors and musicians and celebrities. Now I'm looking for jobs on the internet in my parents' spare bedroom.
Yeah. Because guess what? I don't care who the famous person is. Every single person has done this, has done that, has been in that situation. And the difference is you don't have many people that become successful that are willing to share that part. And that's important. Yes. I wish they would. I wish they would. Like LeBron. LeBron will share his struggles growing up with a single mom, et cetera, of how he stayed driven to being what he became, he still is right now.
And there's also this weird thing that happens in our society where like there's a certain sector of people that like to watch successful people fail. And it's just like
huge.
we're all just people at the end of the day. And it's just sad that someone's like, oh, well, finally the Rock's movie didn't open as well as it should have. It's like, well,
why would you root for that? Why would you root for that?
Pretty well.
But why would you root for that? Why would you want that? What does that do for you? That's what I don't get. And can I just add one thing in?
Please.
Going back to law of attraction, when you're somebody that's constantly throwing out hate and want nothing but negative things for maybe your worst enemy or other people, all right, I swear to God as my witness, all it does is it snowballs right back to you. It boomerangs back to you, rather. 100% true, guys. I swear that's how it works. That's why you'll see people, you're like, how could they get over, they were just enemies with this guy the other day. How are they shaking his hand and, accepting their apology or whatever? Why? Because they want to move on and get back into the right channel and the right frequency again of receiving and living in abundance. That's why.
I love that so much. And I think that's a good note to kind of wrap things up on, because I wasn't doing this last time that we did the interview, which was crazy. I think that was almost 4 years ago. It's 3.5 years ago.
I know.
So, I end every conversation with gratitude, because that's such an important part of my life. And I think it's an important part of what we're just talking about with like abundance. If you can focus on the things that you do have in your life, you're going to get more of those things in your life. So, 3 things in your life you're grateful for right now.
Oh my God. Number one with a silver bullet, my wife and my son. How many did you say?
3.
3. The program we have my son set up for at the moment. Like I told you, he's nonverbal autistic. So we got him into an amazing charter school that I'm very, very excited about for him. Very detailed, I know, but this is the world I live in. And these are important things to me. And number 3, my mom. The fact that I still have her, the fact that she moved down here to Florida to be with us. I love that. Other than my wife, my best friend, right?
I love that. Matt, it's always a great conversation with you. We need to do this far more often. We can't wait 3.5 years to do another one.
Well, and it's weird is because in our city, like the way the mayoralship works, each year in the month of May, and like one of the 5 of the commissioners get chosen and elected as mayor. So last time I did this, I was mayor, and then I got reelected to my commission in 2020. I got reelected, and then I was named mayor this past May. So you're good luck, Chris Van Vliet.
Matt, always such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
I love you, my brother. I mean that. I love you, and I'm proud of you.
I love you too, man. Thank you so much.